we go. Thanks so much, Ken. It's a great pleasure. Hey, Leighton, you don't mind if I'll do a lot of the chatting until you get settled in at home. How's that, Leighton? Okay. Welcome everyone. It's quite an honor to have Tyler Platt coming on to the Soil Matters, to representing Grassroots Fabric Pots. I was just prior to this, I was just telling Tyler how I'm probably the biggest champion of the Grassroots Fabric Pots in Canada, with maybe the possible exception of Nathan Netchell from Black Swallow Living Soils. And that's for anyone in Canada, if you're looking to get Grassroots Fabric Pots and or living soil beds, Black Swallow Black Swallow Living Soils is your place to get that. So without further ado, Tyler, let's just jump right into it. And can you give a little bit of a story around this movement from having these fabric pots to then moving into something like the fabric pots with the living soil liner?
Yeah, of course. First of all, I got to thank Leighton Morrison. It's people like him specifically are the whole reason why we have successful customers. If we didn't have people like Leighton onto these programs and these shows, steering them and organizing them in the right ways, we wouldn't be where we're at today. So I just want to take a moment and thank Leighton. You're an amazing guy, and I really love listening to your voice too on podcasts, man. You just got a powerful voice, and I love hearing it. So thank you, Leighton. You're an awesome guy. And
you're making me turn red, brother.
Good, you deserve it. Yeah, you do deserve it, man. Yeah. You're awesome, man. You deserve it. And Avi, great meeting you today. And thank you for being a big proponent in living soil. We're a small family company. There's been times where we've been a little bit bigger and have like 30 employees and stuff like that, trying to fold and organize all of our pots and beds. But right now, we're still a small family company out of Sacramento, California, with 9 employees. Actually, 8 right now, including myself. We've been making fabric pots. We first started selling them back in, I think, 2015 on Craigslist here in Sacramento. We get to meet with some interesting people in Walmart parking lots and stuff like that. We were just doing whatever we can to get into the cannabis industry because people were asking us if we can make pots. We always did custom stuff. We've always done, cut and sewn products where I need something crazy and ridiculous. And we're like, dude, we're doing it. No problem. That's always been our mentality, our model, our mind is we're here to make what you need and we're going to do it efficiently and we're going to do it at a good cost, the best we can afford to. And that's why we got into the living soil stuff is we've been so open and just wanting to, here, bring it to us and we'll do it kind of attitude. And people told us how much normal fabric pots suck. They are actually, normal events up in Humboldt. You'd have 100 people that love you and love your fabric pots. You'd have 1 or 2 dreadhead guys that come over and be like, these things they suck. And we're like, what? Everybody loves these things, man. You're just like the outliner. You're the crazy guy. But he was the smart one, knowing that these things don't do well for soil. It's like they were originally created for trees to grow trees faster. And then we just jumped into it with the cannabis industry and started going crazy with them, and where it found out with the living soil liner is we had a customer that was wrapping the outside of their pots with saran wrap. And then they had mushrooms pop up in the first 24 hours. And because he'd been pumping in all this biology, inoculating the soil, feeding it, doing compost teas, doing all this stuff, but nothing was happening. He actually wrapped the outside of the container with the saran wrap and boom, you had mushrooms pop up. Boom, we had a different moisture level in the soil that can actually allow these things to proliferate. So it was all there. It wasn't given the environment and the moisture levels it needed to thrive and survive. So we started looking at, I'd say the most iconic situation that really got us into this is Steve Cantwell brought us into his facility in Nevada in Pahrump. And he's like, man, you got to help me get rid of these plastic liners on the outside of my beds. Like, I'm building another facility. I want to do it with all this liner. So literally within a week, I sent him up a sample and he put it into his like little trial room. He's still using the beds with the saran wrap. We still hasn't dealt with that, but we've gone through the evolution of many things, and he's got some some ideas for that room because he really wants to get to 100 cycles of soil. That is truly his goal there. So that's kind of like the evolution of things. We've had other really great proponents like Scott from Crescent Soil Services. He's the one who like really kind of threw it in our face as like, dude, this is like a problem. You got to fix it. So in between Steve Cantwell and Scott from Crescent Soil Services, we've kind of, dialed in kind of how that should work. And right now we're still doing a lot of stuff, man. Like this is in its infancy. We've got other things we're experimenting with. Like this is evolving. It's still moving. Like I personally have a raised bed that I'm doing that has a full sidewall liner, no gap at the bottom, and it's holding a lot more moisture. We're doing sacks now to hold soil for Steve Cantwell. We're doing windrow covers. We're doing a lot of really interesting stuff, but a lot of that is just because we need to survive and we need to keep our people working. We're a small family company, so expanding out and playing along with the evolution of things is how we're going to survive.
And like you said, one of the challenges that you're having would be the fact that you have such a high quality product. This could last 18, 20 years. So your repeat customers are few and far between unless they're expanding and like Steve, getting bigger. And I see that as, a testament to the quality and the choice that you actually did to choose the materials that you're using, because not all fabric pots are definitely created equally. And my clients up here are just, praising that.
Yeah, the fabric's American made. I think we're probably one of the only suppliers that are using actual American made fabric from the state of Georgia. Our same fabric is exclusively made just for Grassroots because we have drainage specifications that we want and thickness specifications. And actually, the thickness specifications come into our employees and how they work with it and how easy it is for them to handle the materials. So it being thicker is easier for them. Great for the customer too. But it's American-made fabric, and it's the same fabric that the U.S. military uses for their HESCO barriers, which have been tried and true in the desert for over 20 years, taking bullets. So if it can handle that, it can handle anything an LED light can throw at it. That's for sure.
That's great. So, of course, our show's the soil matters, and so let's start just jumping into the soil. Now, if you've listened to Leighton, when I talk about super soils, Leighton often will correct me and calls them low tension soils, right? So when what he refers to as a low tension soil are those your just add water super soils that are peat, perlite, compost type material, as opposed to one that actually contains a lot of sand, silt, and clay, more like the horizontal systems. And I have clients who use both. Clients who are using the Grassroots fabric pots or beds in a horizontal system, as well as this, the low tension super soil mixes. What do you want to share some of your experiences with some of your customers of how they're filling up their beds and or pots?
Yeah, I mean, now because of Leighton, his extensive education he's putting out there, I have customers calling me now saying, okay, we're doing this horizontal system. I need these beds and I need this size, I need this specification, and I need them yesterday. And some of these people, they're so like red set, dead, like ready to go, and I don't even get a chance to talk to them because they're like, I'm here to place my order. Let's do this. They're like, their confidence level, they've been through the trials, they've been through what they're setting up. So it's kind of now different. People used to call us and say, okay, well, I'm either trying to price out doing a synthetic grow or I'm going to do a living soil grow. Give me the numbers and we're going to figure it out. Now it's kind of like, okay, I'm doing a living soil grow and now I'm going to do this specific style of living soil, because now we have these different styles and these different niches that are coming out. In my mind, we have multiple different styles out there that people are doing in living soil. You've got the guys who will never touch a bottle and they have to ferment all of their own nutrients and they have to make all their own soil, and they're so gung-ho with that, they become an expert in every single one of those different areas. And I think that's amazing, and I think you've got the other group of people that are doing the horizontal system that are trying to make sure that they are overcoming issues that they think that they've seen other people have. So I think what I'm experiencing with our customers calling in is changing, is evolving. And I'm going to say this several times in this podcast. This is in its infancy. Like we think we've got this figured out. I think there's so much more data that all these people are building up. And it's like the thing is, we just got to get these people together and get them to lay out all of this information so we can start figuring out what the best pathways forward are. That's why we did our Living Soils Summit is last year is like, okay, we got to dip our toes into bringing these people together and bringing some of these educators together. And now we feel confident with it. And we feel like we can take the Living Soils Summits to a whole nother level and be involving a lot more educators. So that's my goal, is to bring all these cool people together and get these guys in a room and get all the people that are trying to figure this out to be able to answer them questions. That's like my personal life goal. So
I think that's what we're trying to do, even with the Soil Matters. And it's so important to bring people together, but at the same time, be respectful of that, this plant and nature, so many different ways of growing, and that we can grow some amazing crops with very different techniques and still produce a phenomenal product at the end. Tyler, do you want to just share a little bit about, like you had mentioned that you're thinking of bringing that living soil liner right down to the bottom and not leave that gap. Do you want to describe a little bit of how the actual structure of a fabric pot and or bed looks like? Because I know there's that impermeable bottom.
Yeah, kind of got a little diagram behind me if I can figure out the right way to get my body out of the way here. I'm like a Roomba, right? I was like a Roomba for a minute there. So this is our living soil liner, where we've got a liner on the side, and the water is going to be able to come down and in there and travel down and exit the gap at the bottom. Now, when we first did versions of this, we actually did do it originally with a liner all the way to the bottom. We didn't release that to the public because what's the biggest general problem people have with cultivation? Overwatering. Yes. It's like, so it's like if we bring that liner all the way down to the bottom, the only drainage they're going to have is at the bottom of the pot. And if you set your pot directly on concrete or a solid flat surface, where's your drainage going to go? How is that natural? The goal I always tell all of our customers is we never want to inhibit drainage. We never want to have a soaky swamp, a wet environment, because then your microbes are going to bring nothing but water and no oxygen, and you're going to change your biology in the soil. So having that gap at the bottom was designed to, if you overwater, you have a drainage area. I also use that drainage gap at the bottom. I always feel it to see if it's dry or see if it's wet. That little gap at the bottom that has no liner, that should always kind of be like a little moist area, in my opinion. That means you're saturating the soil correctly. And that's why I think moisture meters or moisture probes, stuff like that are great to be able to use. Hopefully I didn't get too off track though, but
So now tell me why you're starting to revisit the idea of perhaps taking that living soil liner to the bottom now.
I think that's going to be more of an advanced technique. Somebody who has been using their same living soil system for a long time, and they're really comfortable with moisture levels. Okay. Or let's say you've got a soil mix that's all peat, cocoa, vermiculite, and it's like really airy and really fluffy, and maybe you don't have enough compost in it. I personally experienced some of this, and that's why I got this bed. I got some soil from Craft Farmer. He's kind of famous on social media here in California, but he had a living soil grow in Calaveras County that got shut down. He was given 45 days to clear everything off of his site. I showed up with a trailer and pulled, 5-6 yards of soil off of this property and took it to my own property and grew there. And his soil is very arid, very, very loose. Like there's pretty much no compost in it. It's like a media. So, it was so dry and so airy that I'm like, okay, like this is going to be really hard to keep this saturated. So in my mind, I was like, okay, let's do a living soil bed with no gap at the bottom, and I'll just water it heavier with my irrigation system and see if I can keep it at the same moisture levels as my other soil. It's kind of a nightmare now. I wish I never would have did that because now I have 3 different beds and all 3 of them have different soils and different moisture levels, and it's insane. But we're getting through it. I sent Ken a little video of my garden before this and stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to turn it over to Leighton.
I just had one question, and I'm sorry to rewind it, but can you tell us what the fabric actually is made of? Or
yeah, it starts out as like little plastic tan beads, like just little like pellets. And then what they do is they melt it and they stretch it into fibers. And it comes out to where it's like this thick, like super thick and fluffy. And the real difference in between our fabric and everybody else is we have it heat set on both sides. So when we roll it and press it and compress it, both of these rollers are heated to a proper temperature that they have. Because normal fabric from, let's say, a really dumb pot. I don't want to put the name out there, so I'm going to say
you did perfect. That was perfect.
Okay, good. So that has a fluffy side on the inside of the fabric. It's like kind of fluffy, and they say that's to grab the roots. Well, roots don't need to be grabbed. It's a marketing ploy. Our fabric is hard on both sides, so it has more strength, and it doesn't want to separate. If it's heat set on both sides, that's what it is. So it's a non-woven polypropylene, so it's considered a geotextile.
That's why it works so well. I always wondered that, and the last time we talked, I forgot to ask you, but I was worried it might be proprietary. So thank you for that. That's really interesting, and that's again why it lasts so long. So well done.
Yeah, we try to put out the best quality we can, and it kind of bites you in the butt sometimes, and a customer doesn't call you back for 10 years. But hey,
dude, I have an anti-business model myself. I come in, I take care of your property for two or three applications, and then hopefully you tell a neighbor.
Exactly. We can't afford any national advertising or. You guys say all these garden magazines, now they're getting into living soil. So they contact us and they want us to feature our products for $10,000 and stuff like that. We're like, if you end up posting about us, great. Cause we can't afford that. You know what I mean? So it's, we would be winning all these awards and doing all this stuff in the cannabis industry. We can't pay for that. All of that stuff is paid for. This is all a pay for play scenario where the big companies get the best spots, and we're not a big company. So
and you're doing well, having Scott and Steve and Brandon, those are great people who are going to be strong advocates for the product. And I will throw back to Leighton, but I'm just going to go back to just those low tension soils, those the super soils that are peat, perlite, compost, cocoa coir mixed with a lot of organic ingredients. Now, like a Kiss Organic soil or a Sohum living soil. When you tell your clients who might want to be growing in either a fabric pot or a bed, do you just go in and recommend just putting it all in, fill it with soil, or do you recommend a bottom layer of much like the horizontal system where you have gravel and stones and stuff?
Now it's kind of educating the customer in the different niches that it's about. It's up to the customer to dive into these different areas and go in. I can sit there for hours and try to educate people, but it's not efficient for a small business and a time. I used to spend hours on the phone with people and just blab my mouth about every little thing that I can imagine, but I just don't have the time or the efficiency to do that. So it's more kind of like, a lot of times customers, they call in, they already know their path. They're not looking to me to be the expert. I'm more kind of asking them off of my own curiosity and trying to selfishly kind of gain knowledge and improve my own grow in a certain sense. I mean, that sounded really selfish, but a lot of times these people, I don't get to drill into or be influential on what they're doing. They're more on a war path of we're going to get this done and this is the direction that we're going. A year or two ago, we'd get a lot of people that just didn't know what they're doing and they wanted to do this living soil thing. So I don't want to be like, I don't mean to be dancing around that question or anything like that, but I try to stay away from suggesting what somebody could do because I'm not the one implementing it. You know, it's kind of important for them to go to those different areas and find those different things. You know, if you want to tear into my podcast and be an expert on what, you know, I've the experts that I've brought on there, that's great. And I think you need to be tearing into several different influencers and knowledge seekers. And, you know, honestly, like I think truly a good living soil system is going to have parts and pieces from a lot of different areas. You know, maybe you have a build a soil product. Maybe you've got Soilscape Solutions foliar spray pack. Maybe you've got Organic Soil Live, you know, and their program over there. You know, I mean, it's just everybody's going in all these different ways and these different paths. If you come to me for suggestions, I'm trying to stay away from answering questions about the soil, and I'm more going to ask you about, you know, what was your sap testing looking like, or your tissue testing? Is that telling you that everything is being properly uptake from your soil system? Do you need to make any adjustments from there? Because that's something we can look at mid-flower before we go into flower. We pull sap, pull all the leaves, we send them out to the lab in Michigan. On Monday, on Friday, we get our results back, and then we know if we need to do any corrective foliar spraying or any top dressing. So, you know, I look at these new tools that consultants were using 3 or 4 years ago and were secretive about, that now every single grower should be using, even if you're in just a tent. You know, so I'm truly about, you need to maximize whatever system you're using, and please to God be using science to that, and don't be using some random person's post off of Instagram that's probably bro science. I am really into the people that can apply science on all levels. I visited a famous grower up here in the hills, Nuggy Nick. Nuggy Nick grows the biggest plants I've ever seen. This is the biggest cannabis plant I've ever been next to. These things are 15 feet wide. This is like Mendo dope looking kind of stuff. And he's like, come up, check it out, bring up all your tools. And, you know, we pulled a soil sample. I put my pH meter in there. We checked his ppms, his EC. And he's like, oh man, I'm only at like 500 ppms and these plants are giant. Like, you know, and it's cool. He put all this out on social media and did a post and said, thank you for Tyler coming up and checking this stuff out, because I would normally just would have cruised through the season and not like looked at some of this data, you know. So now he's feeding heavier. Now he's like, you know, going for it. So I more want to be on the end of it, you know, of like, how can I get my customers with whatever soil mass and configuration they're using to go from a mediocre cannabis to that award-winning cannabis. And I feel like the only way of doing that is applying science. And you can get there by luck, but yeah.
And we'll do a shout out there to the Living Soil podcast. I mean, that's a great example of bringing on a lot of science-minded folks to share that. So that's another good way of getting some good information out there quickly.
Thank you. It's really been an interesting last 3 years, and I think that you kind of hit it on the head, Tyler, when you said that, you know, you're not getting the same clients you were before. And, you know, a lot of people have educated. A lot of these podcasts have helped people, you know, get educated to a point where they're not listening to the bro science anymore. I don't get dumb questions like I used to.
Yes.
It's really changed tremendously in just a matter of a couple, you know, 2-3 years. So, you know, all the more reason to, keep moving forward, keep playing with these techniques and methodologies, because we can all learn more. This isn't the end of it by any means.
Yeah,
you know?
It's kind of like that thing. It's like once you think you know everything and then you realize you know nothing kind of thing. It's like, you know, we know nothing. We know nothing at all.
Hey, Ken, do you think you can queue up the garden videos again, and maybe we can take a look at some of those, and perhaps Tyler, you can comment a little bit about some of your practices and what you were doing.
Yeah, I plant my plants way too early in the year, and they're getting way too fucking big. They're touching the top of the greenhouse, and it's an absolute annoyance to me. Every year I try to plant a little bit later because the soil biology in my soil is getting more progressive. So this year I planted on July 5th. The previous year I planted on the 1st, and it's still too early. Plants they're too big. It's too much to manage. I can't see the top of the plants. I mean, it's successful. It's super happy. Like I'll pull what I need to pull off of that garden, but it's also becoming a hassle. You know, when plants get so big, you can't walk through and see the whole plant. It's at the point now I've got to get a ladder. And last year when I did that, I fell on a plant and broke a plant. You know what I mean? So it's like it's great. It's satisfying to have a big beautiful plants and them doing great and them praying and doing great. But it's also a lot of work. It's a lot of hassle. It's just me and my dad. So you know.
Was the cultivar the issue? Is it just too stretchy of a plant, or?
I am probably feeding a little hard. I'm getting a lot of microbes with our program. I'm feeding every week. I'm doing I've got 3 rows that are 48 feet long, so they're about 10 yards of soil apiece. I'm doing a 275-gallon tote with our microbial inoculants and our microbe foods, and I'm dishing them out to that every week. I'm thinking next year I'm going to go back to every other week and slow down a little bit and then plant a little bit later. Ultimately, I want like 2-pound plants that are a little bit above my head. That's like the easiest thing for us to manage and us to work for. So it's great when it's like a big bumper crop and all that kind of stuff, but the bigger the crop is, the more issues you have. So I don't care how good they are, you know, up there in the California hills, we run into issues with weather and humidity and rain this year. And, you know, the trials and tribulations of being an outdoor grower in California, man. It's like if you haven't been there grinding your teeth on it, you're going to lose. And I've lost quite a few years, and I think I'm finally figuring it out. So,
well, at least you have a high house, so you don't have to worry so much about the rain coming in.
Yeah, if it was up to me, I think I would leave my cover off until October and throw it on there, just kind of the end or the flowering cycle, because I love just having the open air and the more breeze and everything. I've got some solar fans. I was able to get some solar fans from a company in Santa Rosa 4 or 5 years ago. They've since gone out of business, and I haven't been able to recommend where people get solar fans since then for an affordable price. But I run solar fans. I run 4 of them, all running the same direction. Was my change this year is I had them facing each other, which was pointless. Now I have them all in one direction, blowing all of the air out. But I've got a row of GMO. I've got a row of hash burger, and then I've got a row of jet fuel gelato that looks retarded. It's just like it literally is just growing really weird and stupid, and it probably hasn't gotten the right levels of nutrients throughout the cycle. So it's just kind of growing weird. But what you're looking at right there closest to us is the GMO, and it's just going crazy. I could be watering too heavy. Could be a reason kind of for that extra stretch.
You ever thought of training, just lashing a fishing line around the top of that and bending it over and then just slowly tightening it every day?
Yep, every plant has kind of gotten that now because I came back and they went from being like 4 or 5 inches from the top to now they're close and they're doing this. Yeah, I guess I haven't learned from my previous year's mistakes, and it's still learning.
It's a journey, dude. It ain't a lesson. It's a journey.
Yeah, and do you want to share? We did look at the microbe food there. I think Ken threw it up there. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what other products you're carrying there and
yeah. Years ago, we were chasing down Elaine Ingham because she was pre-bottling compost tea and shipping it out to people. It was super expensive and it wasn't economical. So we started looking, is there other people that can pre-brew compost tea and are doing this on a commercial scale? And luckily here in Sacramento was a company that had been pre-brewing compost teas for over 20 years. In fact, the Olsons, the family name, they came out with the first registered humic acid inoculant product on the market 20 years ago in collaboration with NASA. And that was specifically to digest poop on the space station. So those are the people that are brewing our microbial teas. They've got a really cool facility out there in West Sac in Clarksburg, California, right there in wine country. He's got about 8 to 10 worm bins, which are 275-gallon totes with a bunch of holes drilled in them. And each tote has an irrigation system and gets watered. So we keep the worms cold and happy and wet. And then the worm leachate that comes off of that is a secret product that we only use internally. But we take the worm castings, and there's 5 different worms, 5 different species of worms that we use. David Olson, he's been doing commercial agriculture for over 40 years. He goes and collects soil samples from different sites and adds them into his mother culture as well. So we're using a mother culture from over 200 different living soil farms as well, and 200 different sites all around the world. So he collects these samples and has them geno-tested. There's a company here in Sacramento that will test your soil or test your biology and do a DNA sequencing on it, so we can see what species are in there. And we can identify, is this a positive biology or a bad biology, or what direction is it going in, what pathogens are there. So that's how he evaluates what we add into the mother culture in a certain sense. Now, the big difference, the whole reason we're working with him and the whole reason we're doing this is because when he feeds those worms, he's using a complex mixture of microbial foods. This complex mixture of microbial foods has over 40 different minerals, has a total of about 200 different microbial foods for microbes. So we feed that to the worms. In turn, the worms digest it, and then in turn, there's got some great worm castings sitting there. So we take those worm castings and then they brew it in a giant container, a 2,500 gallon brewer. Now, so that's the big difference with our product line, is we supply the microbial foods that we use to breed and build these cultures from the beginning, because our goal is to give you the liquid microbial inoculant, have you put it in your soil, but also keep that alive, keep that colony going, because we're giving you the same microbial food mixture to a T that we give it in the beginning to build those cultures. So I think that's the point that's missing with a lot of these microbial inoculants on the market, is they're giving you microbial inoculant, but they're not giving you food to feed them. Would we ever send troops out into the military world without a 72-hour pack, 48-hour pack minimum? Why are we putting microbes into our food, into our soil mass, without providing them with food that they can feed for at least the 24, 48 hours, so they can establish a life and start breeding and, making love, doing the thing, So
you're looking sideways there, dude. I don't know what happened to your camera.
Yeah, I don't know if you got a phone call or something, and there we go.
No,
okay.
Now flip it back again.
Yes.
There you go. Don't touch it. Well, you hit on a really, really important component that I've always preached, and very few people really kind of understood it, that is the function of sand, salt, and clay. If you do not have them in your soils, you have no choice but to feed the microbes, because they can't live on, peat. Peat's got no nutritional value. Your compost
that was kind of like an uproar moment that we had at the Soil Summit. Was we had Bill McKibbins from Logan Labs referring to living soil as a soilless media. And like everybody in the room was like, bro, I don't use a soilless medium. I use living soil. And like everybody was like going crazy. And Steve Cantwell had to stand up. And he's like, okay, everybody calm down. Hold on. Let me straighten this out, and broke down what you just said. We got to have sand, silt, and clay for it to actually be considered a soil. Otherwise, we're using something that's engineered. And I think that's what a lot of people don't really truly understand. Did I say that right, Leighton?
Yeah, you did. Engineered soil can mean a lot of things. Right now I'm engineering a mix for a plant called protein. And it's a 300 million year old plant. It doesn't like a lot of nutrition, likes a lot of drainage. I've got to be very careful about phosphorus and phosphorus solubilizing bacteria. So, anything can be engineered. Typically, engineered soils were what we would use on high performance sports turf, which is 99% sand, 1% organic matter. And then they would use nitrates. And of course, that 1% would disappear. So it was a sand, and then they'd wonder why things weren't growing so well. So a lot of things can be engineered. And I think, going back to a better understanding of low tension soils versus true soils, that's the key to the whole thing. And I think it was basically the misunderstanding of the way the old growers, OGs of Humboldt used to do it, because they would dig a hole in the ground and then put their potting mix in. So they were in a soil. Because yeah, you can always have an O horizon at the top, but you can also have the O horizon deep. As long as the roots can get out beyond that into the sand, silt, and clay to mine it, then you're fine. And so when they were forced to go indoor by camp, they never thought, oh shit, man, there was an interaction from the roots beyond just the potting soil that we used to get them started. And that's where that whole lack of genetic potential really became a big issue. I mean, they had pests like you couldn't believe because they were feeding it with newts and making the plant super attractive to pests. And,
which pretty much created the whole pesticide industry that we have now for cannabis in a certain sense, because they took away what was protecting them. So now the only thing you got to lay back on is, unfortunately, at the time, was chemicals. So.
Exactly. So that was the missing piece. And, I'll be honest, and I tell this all the time, is when I first said at the very first Regen conference, oh, you guys need to be looking more toward biomimicry and using horizons, using these different sand, silt, and clays in your mixes. And of course, they made fun of me and told me, oh, what do you know? You don't know shit. We're the cannabis growers. But I think finally that door has been broken down because of enough people have tried it and been extremely successful using it. And so maybe, in the future, instead of, doing just a horizontal bed, maybe they'll just add some clay and sand and silt in with their compost. I've had people call me back or hit me up about trying that, and it works. It definitely helps the situation. Is it perfect? What is perfect, right? Tell me what perfect is. The only thing I can see is nature, but even nature has all different circumstances. So
yeah, and I can see it myself. Like, I added a bunch of clay and native soil to some of my living soil beds in front of my house, and I've got a way higher retention now of water. And honestly, I go several days without watering them, which was just impossible before, based off of the soil mixture I had. So,
yeah, and that was the other piece that I don't think, even to this day, a lot of the people that are using these low tension soils understand is that the microbes living on these low tension soils will go encysted. And when they encysted, they create a waxy coating, which prevents water from penetrating. So that you go back to that old scenario. Well, now I got to overwater and water. Well, now you turned your bottom anaerobic and the top is hydrophobic, and you're back to square one again. So, that's where adding these, at least some sand, silt, and clay will help to mitigate that low tension and at least create a middle tension where you can have water moving through osmosis.
and be able to have all of the world of microbes there to benefit you. Why would you want to put yourself in one area where you only have 3 or 4 species of bacteria, benefiting you? That's not living soil. Living soil is, let's get every piece of diversity possible in there thriving.
Yep, absolutely, 100%. So, I mean, I think that we're both on the same sheet of music here, and thank you for talking to your clients about these kinds of ideas too, because again, it's trying to raise the bar for everybody, not just for an elite few.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to do a good 150 episodes of the Grassroots Living Soil podcast to get through everything efficiently. It's going to be like a university training course in the end, but hey, there's a lot of stuff out there, and there's a lot of things, and in 3 or 4 years from now, we have this conversation again, it's going to be so much more advanced. Like, I'm looking forward to that conversation 3 or 4 years from now, and how we've improved things even further, so yeah.
So maybe can you tell the audience some of the thoughts that you have as far as improving your products?
Yeah. Oh man, I think there's a bunch of like little things that we would love to look at. We have an open door as far as, I think that's the coolest, most exciting part about my job is I get some, I don't know, maybe they're stoned out of their mind and 30,000 feet, but they get these ideas and they call us, and we harboring these people to give us these ideas, I guess, because a couple times a week I'll get somebody that wants me to do an octagon shaped bed, or they want me to do, this wild, crazy, cool design. And you know what? I am going to chase it down 100% for them. If it's something that we can do, I can't do an octagon bed, so don't bring me those weird shapes and sizes and triangles and trapezoids. We're not going down that path. Yeah, I mean, we're starting to do soil sacks for Steve Cantwell, and he's trialing them right now because he has to buy compost like once a year. Let's say, okay, if you need compost for your facility or soil for your facility, you save a lot of money if you buy a lot of it at once, because you got to pay for shipping, you got to pay for that whole process and the manufacturing of it. So, he's like, why would I buy all this expensive stuff and then store it in a piece of plastic for 6 months? That doesn't make any sense to me. The bottomless pots, I think that has been like just a rager. We're using some of our, which stuff that we used to throw away. Now we get to make them into bottomless pots and have less stuff going into our garbage, man. I mean, so people are treating living soil like we would treat the guys that did Rockwell and cocoa cubes on a bigger cube on a bigger cube and a bigger cube and this like pyramid shape thing. People are doing that with living soil now, or we're starting out a clone in a 1 gallon bottomless pot and they're bottom watering it. And I have people doing this horizontal system in the bottomless pots, by the way. So there's people that feel like horizontal is available to any size container. And they're getting the roots to populate to the bottom to where you've got a big fat layer of roots because they're bottom watering it. And then they're taking that bottomless pot and just setting it on top of the soil, not digging any holes, not disturbing the soil at all. And these people are chasing down that, like, I am a no-till grower. Like that is their passion, because I'm just going to take that plant and set it on top of the soil. I'm not going to dig a hole. And it takes about 4 days for the plant to get fully rooted in there. So for the first 4 or 5 days, you got to water the bottomless pot. But once it gets rooted in there, it's fully Velcroed to the soil and it's there. So the bottomless pots, gosh, we just haven't, that's the only thing right now we can't keep in stock.
Again, that was a great idea, my friend. That was just an absolute genius move.
And I got a Steve Cantwell again. That's all Steve. And his goal was, I've got to transplant this facility with just me and my wife. Everybody's off. We got to get going, and we got to get. I need to transplant a 4x8 bed in 5 minutes because it's just the time it takes me to set them on top of the soil. So, great credit there. We give credit wherever credit's due, obviously. But the microbe and plant food program, I'm really trying to change the game because we have a wettable powder mycorrhiza that is accompanied with microbe foods. So a big issue I see in the industry, or a big wasteful thing, is people dusting the hole with mycorrhiza and then planting their plant in it. Well, you have to wait for the roots to touch that. And it's been so many times where I've done that and I've dug it up in the end and I've still found dry mycorrhiza powder still sitting there on the bottom of my Rockwell cube. Because for a while, the popular thing is you take your wet Rockwell cube and you dip it in some of the mycorrhiza and then you put it in the hole. Or then it became, we dusted it. So with our program, the microbe and plant food program, we have a wettable powder mycorrhiza, and we want you to put that in a 5-gallon bucket with water and some of our microbial inoculants. And we want you to dip your roots in there to inoculate your roots. And if you time this properly and your root ball is kind of dry, it's going to act like a sponge. And you're going to force those micronutrients and those mycorrhiza and the trichoderma into the root ball. You're going to immediately create contact right then and there, and then you're going to plant the plant into the soil. We've seen tremendous success with doing root dip inoculations. So please, anybody who's got mycorrhiza powder, you can make it liquid and you can dip your roots in it, and you can make that 1 pound, 5 pound, whatever it is, last for a really long time. So anytime I talk about this, it gets flagged, it gets reported, it gets deleted, because obviously these companies want you to use as much of their product as possible. Being wasteful is good for them. It's good for the bottom line. So, with our microbial inoculant program, we're trying to preach efficiency and preach, how long can we use these products? Like, that's why our microbial inoculant, microbe foods are powder, and there's no liquid involved with them. So you can keep them powder and keep them dry and use them for up to years. As long as it's a dry powder and has it clumped up, it's good to go. So yeah, I think there's a lot of advancements with inoculating, with looking at microbial species that are, solubilizing certain nutrients. And there's definitely a lot of evolution to be had out there. It's kind of why this industry is so exciting right now in a certain sense.
Are you splitting it at 1 hour?
Yeah, I believe Tyler is as well.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. Damn.
I wonder if we should go to our questions now.
Well, that you get probably a good idea. Although I have the first question. Tyler, have you actually tested your spores to see what colonization, or not colonization, but what counts you're getting for your microbial? Fantastic. Yes. And is it consistent?
Yes, definitely. I haven't looked at those reports in a while, and I believe it's from Earthfort. We've got several tests. We've got a bunch of different tests from a bunch of different places. So maybe I can dial in and send you some of that information and get your opinions on what you think about it.
Yeah, I'm always interested in understanding, these products that are coming out on the market, because again, at the end of the day, competition is good for everybody, keeps everybody in check. So yeah, definitely send them to me when you can. All right, let's hop on questions. We only have 4, so we should be able to get through it pretty quick.
It sounds like we should do this again, man. If we don't have enough time, we're just gonna have to do another episode.
Yes, by all means.
Well, we have nobody booked for next week, Tyler. So how's next Monday sound?
Mondays are I'll make Mondays work. It's kind of our busiest day here, but the afternoons are slow, so we'll make it happen.
Okay. Well, then you're booked for next Monday, guys in the chat. Now you know. Tyler, first question: when can we see handles on 7-gallon pots and up?
You can just call us, and it's $2 for 2 handles. So handles, we consider it custom. We'll do handles on whatever pot, whatever you want. It's $2. So you just got to call us.
All right.
You can fill out the custom form.
I would recommend 4 handles. So you can slide the handles through and pick them up together. If you only have 2, you're going to hit your tree or your branch when you try to pick it up with a stick. Because it's way easier to move with 2 sticks and 2 people than 1 person trying to pick it up, especially if you're using horizons.
You can have as many handles as you want, Leighton. I'll put as many. I'll line the whole top with handles, man. No problem.
Okay, and the next one, Tyler, let's talk convertible pots with removable liners as needed for moisture control indoors.
It's been done before. Steve Cantwell had us venture down that path. We did wraps. So I've got one sitting in my office for a 4x8 bed where it's just the liner and fabric, and it's got 3 feet of Velcro, and it's got a male and female, so you can wrap it like a belly wrap around it. We've done it before. I should probably advertise this stuff more often, but that's why we do these calls, so I can remember this stuff.
and then you can put it on your website and put it as an option. It's like those handles that you need to have on your website as an option. Yeah.
We actually are working on that, and it broke our website. We did that 3 months ago, and it broke our website.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, but we're actually trying to get a machine. It's called a Box X Stitcher. So pretty much we put the pot in there, you put the handle, you press a button, and it does a stitch around the edges and then a Z pattern in the middle. And then you move it, and it is so fast. Right now, we've got to physically mark out on each container with chalk. Okay, we want this handle here, this handle here, this handle here. And you look at it. Okay, that looks right, and then they go and take the time to sew that pattern. It takes a long time. So there's a reason we don't have that. We're not fully equipped to do masses of it yet. But, we definitely want to satisfy the needs of our customers. So you can fill out a bulk and custom request form. Right now, it says we've got a $250 minimum. Ignore that. We're taking any size orders for whatever custom stuff you want. So just fill out the custom form, and we're going to give you a price. So the frustrating part is even if you buy a $10 product, whatever it is, we still got to charge you $19.95 for shipping because FedEx is still charging me for shipping. So that's just the hard part.
Then the next one would be, how many times a year do you apply your biodynamic preparations?
Oh man, I think I actually base this kind of off of some of my soil testing. When I get a soil test back and a saturated paste test back, it tells me what my decomposed plant matter is on a percentage basis in my soil. When I started out with my soil, it was at like 28, 25%. And I was like, wow, the goal is like 30%. So I'm kind of lacking life. I'm lacking biology. So I turned to science, and it told me I've got not enough there. Now this last year I pulled my saturated paste test from Logan Labs, and I had 68.5% microbial decomposed plant matter in my soil. So I've got a high amount of microbial material in there. I've got decomposed plant matter, got a lot of different things. So in that case, I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of raging here. I see mycelium in my soil. I've had mushrooms pop up. This is the 5th year using the soil, 5th year using the same program that I've been using. So things are really getting consistent here. It's really starting to see some naturalities, but I'm human, so I fucked that up. But
don't be a moron. Yeah.
Don't be a moron. Don't put more on.
So how you went up in your organic matter to 67%?
Yes, I went up, and that kind of told me that I've got a lot of biology in my. Oh, camera thing happened again. Let me try the flip flop. I'm not sure what's happening here, guys.
It's your energy level, bro. Okay. There you go. There you go.
Intense, man.
Are you top with compost between every grow, or I mean that's
before I plant, my process is in about January and February. I pull my soil samples with a coring tool, and I test each bed separately. I've got 3 different beds, so I take a sample from each 4x4 square out of that bed, and I put it in a bucket, mix it together, take my 2-cup sample out of that. So I've got a spectrum of that bed. I'm sorry, Leighton, what was
you also use a mulch too, right? So you are adding some organic matter to the surface, and it eventually gets
is migrating down. I do a really cool process. We call it fish and chips for my mulch layer. So we take oak wood chips, and Steve Cantwell kind of told us in the last Soil Summit that wood chips for smoking food seem to be the easiest and quickest source that he's able to get. So wood chips for smoking, barbecuing. So I mix, I'll do like 3 equal parts. I do like wood chips, oak wood chips specifically, rice hulls, and then straw, 3 equal parts in a wheelbarrow. And I'll fill the wheelbarrow full of water. And I got these like big pavers, and I'll put some pavers down on top of there because I'm just really trying to saturate that mulch layer and get it wet. And in that process, I'm going to add in my microbial inoculants. So that'll be like the fungal dominant version of our microbial compost tea. And I'll add microbe foods, and I'll add mycorrhiza. But the most important part about that whole thing is some fish products. So like whatever it's fish and shit, or whatever, anything. I preferably, like for me, if I'm going to use a fish product, I want it to be cold processed, and not boiled or heated, because then you lose a lot of that really good stuff. So I've turned to like Pacific Grow fish hydrolysate. That's been a really popular one. So I'm inoculating my mulch layer, and I'll let it sit for 15-20 minutes, something like that. And that's usually sitting while I'm doing my planting. So, I've already pre-prepped a couple wheelbarrows with this kind of stuff, and the fish and chips is chipping, it's hanging out, it's soaking, it's doing its thing. I plant my plants, I lay my irrigation lines back down. Next year, it'll probably be a blue mat system where I do a separate 12-foot section. After we get my irrigation lines down, then we're putting our mulch layer down. And specifically, I was taught you never want to do more than 1 inch of a mulch layer. So after I plant, I do what I can to create a little bit of a concavement around the plant. So when we water it, it gets that fresh watering area. But then I level out the rest of the soil, make it nice, evenly flat. Put my mulch layer down, so I make sure I'm getting just about 1 inch. And then you can come back in about a week, and that whole mulch layer is just consumed with mycelium, mainly because of that fish, is really adding the food that mycorrhiza and those myceliums need to just go nuts. Then you kind of create this layer on the top of your soil that's holding moisture for that bottom couple of inches as well, because that mycelium is going to go down. So that's the fish and chips method. That's from David Olson, the guy who created our product line. He dived really deep into that on episode 3 of the Living Soil podcast of fish and chips and why you should be doing that, inoculating your mulch layer. And he went into doing these really cool things of like doing these sections in the middle of a 4x8 bed that were like 6 inches deep, 5 inches wide, that were just like solid mulch. And then that whole area would just become a giant mycelium mat that's just holding moisture for the whole plant. So he's a super geek about this stuff. So there's some really cool
get him
interesting
on
tips
here.
there.
Yeah, we should.
So I've coined David he is the microbe man. So whenever I promote him, whenever I do anything, it's David the microbe man. That's like the nickname I've given him, and it's so far it's sticking, and he loves it. So
cool. Well, Ken, reach out to Tyler and get his contact. We should add him on here.
This guy is so cool. He holds patents for an aerial surveillance program that can scan plants to see their health and to see the different spectrums that they put off. He holds multiple different patents. He's one of God's gifts to cultivation, in my opinion.
Nice.
So that kind of not the last part of the comment, but the mulch layer, etc. GI wanted to know, where can I buy small quantities of silt and have it delivered? I'm disabled and having problems finding silt.
Well, dude, hit me up. I got an A horizon I can send you. I'm doing this poaching mix, so I made a base A that I'm going to amend for them. So it will be sand, silt, clay, and organic matter. Otherwise, you got to go to biodynamic compost makers, not the ones that are selling fluffy stuff. There's a guy out here, Weinbrandt Family Farms on the West Coast, and then there's another cat on the East Coast. I can't remember his name. Hit me up on the IG, and I'll try to find it for you. But they make silt. I mean, they just compost down to the point where it's just this greasy, fine silt.
So that was part of the conversation that the chat was having. Is silt is basically the end of the compost pile. Basically, is what's left is silt.
Yep. It's the finest particulate of organic matter left, whether you find it in a river or at the base, at the bottom of the compost pile. But it's been broken down so much that there's only very few specialized bacteria that can break it down to the next level.
So what Perpetual is saying here, so to use silt just means a soil structure with sediments from an organic matter with a certain size between sand, larger, and clay, smaller particles.
That's the way soil science describes it. But soil science defines sand, silt, and clay by their particulate side instead of their physical properties. And I have a real problem with that because they say silt is mineral. Well, yeah, everything is fucking mineral, but the point is it was from organic matter. Rock is not from organic matter. Sand can be from organic matter if it's calcitic sand, because that's basically coral reefs. And those bacteria, like a mollusk, will build their shell or build their home, making it out of calcium. So when they die off, isn't it organic matter? You know, it gets deep, you guys. It gets really deep when you go down that rabbit hole. And I think that's why soil science has remained the same in definition of sand, silt, clay based on screen size, not on physical property.
Yeah. And that's it for questions, guys. So I don't know if you guys want to keep going after the hour, or everybody's got a hard deadline.
I got a few minutes I can spare. Nobody's banging on the door asking me to answer phone calls.
Not yet.
But Av has to run.
I gotta jump. And I believe next week I'll be at the Grow Up Conference, so I may not be able to join in. Pleasure. I will send you some contacts, Tyler, for some Canadian grassroots fabric pot growers or fabric bed growers. And yeah, thanks so much. Thanks.
So looking forward to connecting with you.
Thanks for joining us, brother. Peace out.
Bye, Av.
All right. Well, yeah, I can definitely spend another couple of minutes too, but then I can get ahead on something because I was going to have to work till ridiculous tonight. So it's kind of good that we did end a little bit earlier. And Tyler, just wanted to say thank you, dude, for all that you have done for the whole industry as well. I mean, you're definitely one of the pioneer educators out there protecting people from bro science. So big kudos to you.
Thank you guys. Just excited to see the success of our customers. Your guys' success is our success. So it doesn't get any simpler than that.
Agreed. 100%. Was there anything else you wanted to tell us, Tyler, about upcoming things or events or products or anything else?
At this moment, I think the main thing is we're promoting our sample pack for our biology. We have a new fungally dominant version of the compost tea that you can only get if you buy our sample pack on the website. So you get a full line of our products in small sample sizes. You get the wettable mycorrhiza powder. Yeah, there's the sample pack right there. You've got the fungally dominant compost tea on the right, and then our normal compost tea. And then we actually do have a 5 times concentrate version where they've just dehydrated out the water. So it's a lot thicker and it's 5 times concentrated. And that's what a lot of our commercial customers are starting to buy because of the per usage is a lot easier and you're using like 10 mils per gallon compared to when you had to use like 50 to 60 mils per gallon. So yeah, I think having some diversity in your garden is great. You should get some, mammoth pea. You should get some compost from here. You should get some stuff from there. You should just be creating this, collision of diversity. So, let it work its all self out in the soil, So yeah, I mean, we've got some really cool products on our website. We've got a bunch of stuff. 45-gallon and 65-gallon Shorty soil savers are at 50% off. There's a whole section of our website specifically dedicated to clearance. So, if you're looking at buying any products, I would go on there. The last thing I want to say is our classic pots are really, really good without the liner for anybody doing outdoor stuff on the East Coast because you're so humid already. So that's one big tactic you'll see us doing in the future is if you're in a dry, arid climate outdoors, you really want a living soil pot or bed. And if you're in a really humid environment, you probably just want to go with the classic pot because you're going to get those moisture levels. So that is one big difference that we're seeing. And next time I revamp the website and you look at, okay, what do I need? And it's like, okay, what environment are you in? Okay, let's match a product based off of your environment.
Yeah, and if you're in an indoor environment like I am in Canada, it's a totally different situation again.
Yeah, and we found that indoors you want the living soil liner. We've got years. We haven't ever broadcasted it, but I've been very vocal about it. Like people like Steve Cantwell, the moment he started wrapping his beds with that plastic, his PG&E bills, his power bills went down. His dehumidifiers were running a lot less because that humidity was held into the soil mass. It wasn't just leaking out all into the room. So he's got years of data that he can release showing, okay, from this point, we're paying this much for our power bill because the dehumidifiers were running X amount of time per day. Now we're wrapping, we've got the liner, and then now we're down to this point because humidity levels are easier to manage.
Nice.
And that's good to know.
Yeah, good information. Well, cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Tyler, for coming on. We'll see you next Monday. Playback Monday.
Yeah, playback Monday.
Well, and maybe we'll get into this question from Billy about installing sprayers or water systems in your trellis system.
Well, there you go.
That is an interesting one. We've had a lot of people kind of do that in the past, and I just say go for it, man. Just create a flush out, create a way to clean it out, create a way to take all those little sprayers out, and because they're going to get clogged, because you're probably going to put something biological in there at some point, it's going to get clogged. So I would recommend an inline filter before it goes into that, so it can be cleaned, and then an exit so you can flush it. So there's definitely a way and a pathway of doing that, man. If you want to create a cool system like that, just call me. I'll give you some tips.
I think we need to introduce them to Leah Oram and her products, which cleans that biofilm out, Leighton. I think that'd be a good thing, eh?
There you go. You can put that on his website too.
Exactly. Right? Okay, guys. Well, we'll get back into it next week. As for the rest of this week on shows, we have a new lab. We have a discount code. They're in California. They do biological testing as well as soil samples. They're on us with myself and Andy Lopez, the Invisible Gardener, on Wednesday. And then, of course, Thursdays, the ladies have a guest, and I'm going to let you guys find out on Thursday who it is and what they're going to be talking about.
Nice.
And everything else, guys, just say peace out, and I'm going to end the broadcast.
All righty. Take care, everybody. Peace out.